Welcome to the No Plan B podcast number 2. I'm trying to get Keith Norris in the show, and he's probably going to be joining. Sorry for the interruption before some things went wrong. We're there. We're coming up. Okay. Keith just asked me to join. I think it's done, and here we go. It's coming to talk about what is it to look good and to be healthy. And hey, finally.
Yeah, a little technical difficulties. I think we're all right now.
I guess we are. Thank you for joining, Keith. It's fantastic to have you. I've been waiting and expecting you. I actually messed up the first time because you were waiting for me, and I didn't know that. I
No
didn't know
problem.
where to get you. We're going to talk today about a lot of things because you have done a lot in your life, and you've been very active for over 40 years from what I've read. So let's start by saying that you are a former military guy. So
Yeah, that's correct.
yeah.
Yeah. So 9 years in the Navy, and before that, I was a competitive athlete. So I took all that competitive athleticism and wanted to stay in the boys' club essentially. And at that time, that meant going into the military, and so I did. And spent 9 years in the military.
Yeah, in the military, and you've been active in the last 40 years for sure. But what impresses me much is like you're coming from athlete background. You go to the military for 9 years, and then you become an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, there was a step before that that's kind of interesting. When I got out of the military, I worked for corporate America. And not just corporate America, but the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh no! Go.
So
Okay.
so I got to see, and when I went into the pharmaceutical industry, I was young, and I really thought that I was doing humanity a solid, right, by going into the pharmaceutical industry. And as I began to rise up through the ranks and kind of get to peek behind the curtain, I saw it wasn't all like that, and I became very disillusioned because I knew how to keep the human machine healthy, and I knew it via smart diet and exercise and all of these things, and the pharmaceutical industry didn't want to hear any of that, right? They're obviously right. They got
products.
They need to sell products, and finally I rose to a position to see how the pharmaceutical industry had this tremendous influence upon the health decisions that the nation was making. And there was a cognitive dissonance there that I was like, I can't do this any longer. And, it is true. It was very difficult for Michelle, my wife, and I to bail on that because she was part of corporate America too. And the golden handcuffs that we talk about, those are real. Right, that's real. I mean, we had a big house. Big house, big cars, all the, keeping up with the Joneses, all of that. What I thought at that time was the American dream. And so did Michelle. And we thought, because we come from blue collar backgrounds, and neither of us had much money growing up. And so we thought success meant rising to a position where you had the big house, where you had the big cars, where the kids were in the best schools, all of that. And we were still miserably unhappy, and we couldn't figure out why. Right. And we did. And that was the beginning of our awakening. Right. And so,
Yeah, because comparing the American dream is based on comparison to others, what others have. You want, and you're chasing that dream that doesn't exist because it never stops. And this is why the depth of United States is so deep.
Right.
People buy things that they don't need with the money they don't have, and they end up being tied in psychological problem. I agree on that.
Right.
So tell us what triggered that switch. How did you change, and why did you change that pattern?
Right. So there was a couple of things that happened. One of which was we had a daughter at the time, Brittany, and she was 22 years old and away at college. And 3 days before her 23rd birthday and a week before her college graduation, she died in an auto accident.
Holy.
And at this time, Michelle and I were very disillusioned by corporate America, and we had already started to make plans to exit corporate America, right? We were trying to get our money situated and do all of this so that we can make a clean exit and go out into entrepreneurship. We didn't know exactly what we were going to do. We just knew we weren't going to be part of the machine anymore. So that happened, and obviously that set us back. I mean, that was such an emotional hit on both of us.
And there is nothing worse than losing a kid, you know.
I can't, Michelle and I have been through a lot, and that is the toughest thing we have ever been through. And we've been through a lot.
You know, the beauty of that is you're strong. You guys, both, Michelle and you, are very strong, because 80% of couples that goes through that struggle, they split. They don't stay together. Yeah.
It's true. And we did.
You're there, yeah.
Right. So this was back in 2009, and if people remember what happened in 2010, that was the housing crisis. So all of our nest. So the nest egg I told you about that was going to be there for us to exit corporate America. At this time, we had invested heavily in real estate, because real estate never goes anywhere, right?
Yeah,
so we thought that. That's what they were saying until September 2010, and it took a nosedive, and it's so much so that we were teetering on bankruptcy. So now we had the loss of a daughter. Now we have bankruptcy staring us at the face, and we had a choice. We had a choice to keep doing what we were doing, because that was safe, right? We were still getting hefty paychecks, all of the things. That was safe. And we said, you know what? We're not doing it. We said we were going to leave. We told Brittany we were going to leave. We are not going back. We don't know what's going to happen, but we are not going back to that machine. And we left. And everybody, and I do mean everybody in our circle, thought we were absolutely crazy.
Yeah, of course. And you lost everybody in the process. And friends, family, everything. Yeah.
Yep. And we knew one thing. We knew that we wanted to come to Austin, Texas, because we're both from the general area. We knew that was where we wanted to be. That's where our home was. And we knew that Austin was the epicenter of the type of entrepreneurship that we wanted to get into, namely fitness and the healthy lifestyle. And so we did. And long story short, I opened gyms. Michelle is a trained chef. She started a catering company, and we started on a bootstrap and a wing and a prayer, and made it.
So it's been like 12 years now, something like that.
And then, yes, and in the process, we had this crazy idea to start essentially a health and wellness conference that turned into Paleo FX.
And that the biggest event ever made about, I think it's the biggest in the world.
It is, yeah. So it's the biggest paleo leaning event in the world. And in 2020, we were slated to have 10,000 people at that conference. The first conference we had in 2011 was 800. So the trajectory in that time period from 800 to 10,000, we were on a rocket ride. And then, the whole COVID thing hit. And again, we were devastated. Again, facing bankruptcy, but by this time, the first time you face bankruptcy is a shock. I can tell you.
Yeah.
The second time you face it, you're just kind of like, okay, whatever, whatever. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I've been through that. As well. The first time for me was a true shock. Like it looks like you've lost your life. A reason for living and everything.
Yep.
After that, it's just like, I don't know, it's a process. And especially in North America, I think it becomes a process of executing stuff to make things better. So being an entrepreneur like you, sometimes you have to take decision and say, okay, I'm going to divest this company, or I'm going to close this business. You face bankruptcy because you're in America, you're responsible for your businesses. So depending of who you deal with, but most of the time you end up having lawsuits from others, and you have no other choices to go under that protection law. It's hard, but as you said, it's a step, and you prove it again.
Now here is where, because we were on the brink of bankruptcy with Paleo FX, and everyone smart and financially smart, and all of our advisors and our tax attorney and tax accountant, all of these people said, we know this business is more than just a business to you, because it was. I mean, this is Brittany's legacy. And so it was more than just a business. They said, bankrupt this business, save yourself, live again, lick your wounds, come back, and you can create another something. You've proven to do it before, you can do it again. And we said, no, we are going to fight, and it may not make financial sense, but we can't let this die unless it is the absolute last option. And as far as we're concerned right now, we're not at the last option. And so, just like you said, what generally happens in cases like this is the entity that's going into bankruptcy gets sued and dogpiled, right? People are trying to extract their money back out before the ship goes down.
Yep.
We didn't have any of that within this community. They said, just hang on, we believe in you, we'll see you when you come back up. And that is the only thing that kept us from having to file bankruptcy, is the people who hung with us. Ticket holders, exhibitors, sponsors, the whole community hung with us and rode through this 2 years. And now we're going to be back this year, this April 29th in Austin, Texas. And it is because of the people who supported us through this very, very lean period.
I want you to explain this, please, because you've built a community of dedicated and faithful people. If you look at what is around with social media and all the tools that are up and running now, people are struggling to build that type of communities, having people faithful enough to follow you wherever you go, in the up and the downs. So what I see on social media most of the time, without throwing balls and shit in the show, it's like people are following the up to get some sort of fame out of it. But when you're not there, where you go down or where you change mind, they disappear. So tell us, how did you build up that relationship with your community to make them that faithful and that dedicated to support you whatever you go through?
Well, I think it's I think it's a number of things. I think part of it was everyone who we associate with, whether it's business-wise or friendships or it is a true investment on our part, a true friendship. I mean, we aren't in it at a surface level. We aren't in it to get, it's for a give and take. If these contacts we had very, very early on, that's how we were able to put on the first conference. I always tell people ask, like, what is your natural gift as an entrepreneur? And I am not the business guy. I guarantee you, I'm not the numbers guy. I'm not the business guy.
But you have somebody around you that
does, yes.
Yeah.
Michelle is she has much more business savvy than I do any day of the week, much more business savvy. And still, she doesn't have the type of business savvy that can take us to the next level. So we realize that we're very, very humble. My tools are limited in this area. My tools are limited to being able to network and meet people and connect people. And I connect people because I get a thrill out of it. Because I know person A, what they're all about, and I can visualize in my head what a connection to person B would look like. And I make that introduction, and it's just magic. I don't know what that is, but that's a gift that I have. From that, and Michelle has this gift too. So these connections that we made, and these secondary connections and tertiary connections, just started to span out. And all of these people are like-minded. They all contribute back. They all have this mindset. And so and I think that set the core.
Yeah. Do they have that mindset before joining the network, or you just improved it when they joined your network?
I think it's both. Yeah, I think it's both. So, but that is what this community breeds too. A cohesiveness, a very, very tight cohesiveness. And I've never seen this in any other, and I'm not patting myself on the back. It's because it wasn't just me, and it wasn't just Michelle. It was all of these people who came together, and they created the vibe. And we call it the Paleo FX vibe. And you feel it when you were on the floor at that show. You can feel the connectedness. You can feel the connectedness is all I can say. We call Paleo FX the Burning Man of health and wellness, because it feels very much like that coming together of a like-minded community. And that is what kept this whole enterprise alive over the last 2 years. And we are so excited rolling into this year, because it is going to be a reunion of all of these people that is 2 years past due. So it's going to be epic.
Time. Yeah, it's about time. Yeah. We're going to keep going on that way. It's interesting to see how you created that community. I was on a podcast with Mason Badingo for a Breathing Hair podcast, and he was asking me, how do you unify people? And I said, sometimes I feel like I've meant to be a guru. Are you a guru?
I don't, I always say I'm not your guru. What I like to say is I'm a Sherpa.
Oh, even better.
Yeah. So and Michelle and I do facilitation in the teacher plant realm. That's part of what we do. And we don't consider ourselves shaman or anything like. We say we are a Sherpa. I've been where you're trying to get.
Yeah.
And I can guide you to get to that place. But at the end, you still have to tote the pack up the mountain.
Yeah.
Right. I can't do that for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I can guide. I can be there for you. I can offer support. I can do all of this, but you still have to take step after step after step.
Yeah.
To get yourself there.
Yeah. That's the most difficult part to achieve, because if you look at our society, and that's some things we said yesterday, people are looking for the magic pill on everything. So they're always ready to, I would love to be there. But being there takes certain discipline and efforts and stuff like that. They're not always ready, and they're expecting you as the Sherpa or as the guide to give them the pill and say, hey, now it's magic. You're going to be there.
Right.
So that legwork is a big piece, and it needs efforts. How do you keep people motivated during that process?
Yeah. So that's part of what the Sherpa does, right? The Sherpa knows where the difficult parts are. The Sherpa preps the people he's guiding up the mountain for these difficult parts. And so I think that's what it is. I can, when we're in these moments, I know when a difficult part is coming up, and I can prep whoever we're working with to get through those periods. And I can be there for added support. I can give them tools and techniques at the right moment, because I know it will be fresh in their mind, or I'll remind them of this simple things like in those moments of, in an extreme, intense environment that can be had in the psychedelic space, just simply reminding people of their breath. Find your breath. That is your lifeline. Find your breath. I'm here. I am right here. You're safe. All of these things. Get their body recentered. All of these things. And inevitably, we can work through those rough patches, and then they're off and rolling again. But that is what a Sherpa does. I can't do the hard work for them. I can't take the fear. I can't do any of that. All I can do is help navigate them through that, but they still have to do the legwork. And when you get somebody who's willing to do the legwork and understands what that relationship is, you can do tremendous work with these people. Tremendous. Yeah.
Of course. people underestimate, just going to lower my volume, I think it's too high. People underestimate the power of our brain and our capabilities. They have to be guided in that direction. This is what you do great. I've seen and I've read that you help people in post-traumatic syndrome disorders,
Right.
sexual and related trauma. I'm going to ask about sexual harassment. I'm most harassed by women. I'm just kidding.
Right.
But tell us about this, because you're coming from a background of military as well, where post-traumatic syndrome is so present. It became the biggest dilemma that the Army is facing now. How do you deal with these things?
So
how do you help those people?
Totally. So the first thing I will say is that trauma written large is what affects a person and holds an individual back from achieving the life that they want to live.
True.
Right. And so there is no hierarchy of traumas that should affect an individual. For instance, we have worked with people who have suffered sexual trauma, say, and from the conscious mind, from the logical mind, you would think, well, that person is probably traumatized by that. And that may or may not be true. What happens is, we were talking about how the mind works in the subconscious mind. What happens is we have all these bits of information coming into us. Millions upon millions of bits of information, available information coming into us. And because of our senses, there is a reduction valve to how much information enters our brain. And from that reduction, we will delete, we will alter, or we will completely rearrange how that hits in our internal system. So for instance, the person who is sexually traumatized, for whatever reason, and this is an example, for whatever reason, this never registered on her. And it was just an event that was kind of like, she shrugged it off and was like, okay. But her second grade teacher looked at her cross-eyed or whatever during one point when she was a child, and that set the course of her life for the next 20-something years. So you just can't determine what is a trauma and what is not a trauma.
What you build and what is actually induced to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So here's another example to make this more clear in the PTSD realm. We've worked with a number of people who have been in this similar situation. 4 Marines in a Humvee in Anbar province, Iraq. The Humvee takes a missile hit and just destroys the Humvee. 4 Marines with similar injuries. 3 of them go home after recovery and they're never affected by it. The 4th one is rocked with PTSD.
Yeah.
That is the nature of trauma. For those 3, for whatever reason, it did not register as a trauma. For that one, it wrecks his life. So that's the first thing, is there is no hierarchy to trauma. If it's limiting this person's life, it is a trauma. And I take it very, very seriously. Whether it's a missile attack or a second grade teacher looking at you sideways, does not matter. It's affecting your life. We can deal with it. Now, on the practical level, essentially what we are doing, we are using a combination of teacher plants, depending on the person we're working with and the compatibility, and both Western and NLP techniques to dive into the subconscious mind. And the trick is to get this person to associate into the trauma without that person's central nervous system going into sympathetic.
Yeah.
As soon as the central nervous system goes into sympathetic, we lose contact with the prefrontal cortex, and that person folds right back into what we would call reptilian mind, right?
Yeah.
And you can do no work. Zero work can be done from that. But this is why talk therapy never works. You get somebody to associate into a trauma, boom, you've lost them. You can't do any work.
Yeah.
The idea from there is, this sounds like a very simple process. It takes a long time to get here.
It's not that simple.
But
that's simple.
But in essence, for whatever reason, how humans are wired, if we go into a trauma and learn the lessons that can be learned from that trauma, the emotional charge on that trauma evaporate. If the person so chooses, the person will still remember the trauma and they will remember the lessons from that trauma, but the emotional charge and the PTSD will vanish. And by the way, every addict that we have worked with, whether it's alcohol, drugs, whatever, the same thing applies. Addicts do not become addicts just for the hell of it.
No,
what they are doing is they are trying to push down the pain of a trauma.
Yeah.
Find out what the trauma is, and the addiction evaporates. And we're talking heroin addiction overnight. No withdrawals, no anything. People say that's crazy, and traditional science or traditional medicine would say that's crazy. I've seen it time and time again.
Yeah, because normally in the brain, the process takes approximately 2 weeks to be coming from a certain level. It's the baseline of your neurotransmitter that creates the dependence or the addiction. So you have to lower your baseline in a certain way, and to be done, it takes like getting through the addiction and remodeling that build up to put your baseline down, and that process is about 2 weeks. Yes, that's what science.
And it can. Yeah, that's what science says. I've seen it done overnight. One session, bam, complete with integration. Right, you just don't send them home and let them eat. Right, so we're constantly talking about, constantly keeping up. But the addictive draw to whatever it is, and it's at the end of the day, it's like, well, of course they don't have the trauma anymore. There's no reason to. There's no pain to tap down. The pain is gone.
Is it using hypnosis or techniques like that?
Yeah. So that's essentially what these substances are. So it can be done through deep hypnosis. Yes. So what is psilocybin and MDMA?
Today has a big trend because there's so much. We had Zapolin last. I've learned so much about these new substances. Of course.
So this is why, by the way, psilocybin and MDMA are so very powerful, because it allows association into a traumatic event, with some objectivity, so that they can go into the trauma, get the lessons, and I can get them out of the trauma before the central nervous system goes into red line. That's the whole key to this whole thing. That's why those substances are useful for that application. If you want to get down to brass tacks, that is what they are useful for. Yeah.
I've heard from people in science or lab or John Hopkins lab, they have to be very structured in the terms of deliverance and the way that, how do you handle that? How do you manage those? Because you're operating in an holistic way of helping people, but you're using some sort of medical or paramedical substances to help them as well. Do you have a team around you that helps you making sure that everything is
luckily we're in Austin, Texas, and we are surrounded by people who think, and surrounded by people who have done the work both on themselves and both with clients. So we have all this, and we study. We look at MAPS. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the MAPS organization, but we study what MAPS does. And here's the other thing. I love what MAPS does as far as I do.
There's some sort of controversy, but, there's controversy on everything today.
There's controversy on everything. And, some people might call me a conspiracy theorist, but where is the controversy? Where is the controversy coming from? Might it be coming from a big pharma? Because guess who wants to put the squish on this? Big pharma. Exactly, because they want to control these substances. You think that's out of the goodness of their heart, or do you think it's profit motive?
No, there is no conspiracy on that. It's a clear statement that the pharmaceutical industry wants to control, like obesity and diabetes. Look at these substances, treat that. They're so controlled. And when you look at the results, go back 15 years ago, the baseline to be considered obese was different than the one today. The baseline to become dependent to some things, are sick in a way, was different. They're always constraining the limits to the fact they want more people to be in that bracket.
Totally.
So, there is no controversy on our conspiracy theory about that. We all know that pharmaceutical companies wants to control what they can sell, and this is the way they make money.
And here's another thing. Here's another way to look at it too. So Michelle and I have spent a vast amount of time in Peru and the Amazon, right, with these tribes and cultures who have used medicines for as far back as their lineage goes, as far back as their oral history can take them.
Yeah.
These people have a mastery of human psychology just from doing the work that will astound you. We tend to think of them as backwards, let me tell you, they have more mastery of the human psyche than anyone, and I'm saying anyone that I have ever talked to in the West.
Yeah, I bet.
And there's no fancy degrees, there's no university. It is doing the work night after night after night after night with real people. That's how they learn this. And it's passed down generation to generation to generation to generation.
That's the thing. Today we call it biohacking.
Right.
Look at the whole society of biohacking. Where is coming from? It's coming from old culture and generation and practice that were in India, that were even the bulletproof coffee is coming from. That's it.
Yeah.
So when you look at all these things, yes, we do have to learn from the past. We do have to maybe put it back where it has to be. Our society has been trying to speed up so fast that we just forgot to consider what was before us. Now we're looking at it, and we're just looking at it and saying, oh, yeah, there is things that are good, roots, like plants and the use of various supplements that were not existing 5-7 years ago. Today, turmeric, we're using it as supplement. It was used for ever.
Right.
Things like
And
that.
so
yeah.
And so when you look at the medicines that these people in the Amazon and in Peru, and I'm just using them as an example. There's examples all over the world of this. But that's one example. And you see how they use these medicines and how they work a person through a psychological issue or a problem. In my estimation, the proper use of science is someone like I don't know if you've ever interviewed Dr. Erica Zilfand. She's a foremost in Western medicine. She is foremost in this area. That in my estimation, the proper application of science is to go, okay, let's see what these people are doing, both from the medicines they're using, the pharmacology of the medicines they're using. How does that affect the human body? What I would call the soft science of it all. How are they interacting with the client, with the person they're working with? Take those into combination and then view that through a lens of modern science. What can we learn from this that we can make better?
Yeah.
And that is the approach, right? These people have it figured out. Do they have everything figured out? No one ever has anything figured out. Totally. But we can shine a spotlight on that from the Western medicine perspective and glean new insights. And we can build upon that. That's kind of the idea. Build upon what these people have done, because they've done amazing work. Let's add another layer to it and add another layer to it and continue in that way. That's
that's the best way to do it, because I think that you're still going to be kind of censored by
totally
pharmaceutical companies or the government or FDA or whatsoever. Those rules are in place because of our society. I think the work that you do in the background will definitely help, because this revolution of thinking, like the MDMA and mushrooms and all these things that are coming now, if you look at that, 20 years ago, don't even talk about it. You go to jail.
Right. Yep.
Today, it's changing because the first that were preaching about substances and MDMA or microdosing were the one that were making the more money in the world.
Yep.
They were using microdose to go to work.
Yep.
And people have been starting to think, oh, but maybe there's some things there. And these guys had access to what you're doing in on the ground. So the work you do brings to the elite of our society, the one that actually are more materialistic than anyone. But in reverse, we get to spread the knowledge to our society, and probably, hopefully, I think that your message goes through, and we get to motivate people to go more deep into those practice and those pharmaceutical, I would call them.
Right.
Practice. Cool.
And so I was going to say, the idea here is in human culture, good ideas and ideas that work can only be suppressed for so long.
True.
Governments, entities will try to suppress them, and you can't. If something works for somebody, they are an evangelist. They're going to tell their best friend about it. And this just split. This is what's happened in the psychedelic community, right? Especially in the military community. The sad thing about this, right, as it stands right now, is if someone is either in the military, if someone's in the military suffering from PTSD, they have to go out of country if they're going to seek this kind of treatment, which is a travesty. This type of treatment, it is a travesty, and it really pisses me off because I'm military. It's a travesty because they have to do that, because they feel like they have to go in the underground. These type of treatments just annihilate the treatments that are available legally. Every study, look at them, at what the work that MAPS has done, it's laughable. MDMA, assisted MDMA therapy versus whatever. I don't care what.
John Hopkins is on it.
Does it?
Yeah. John Hopkins lab, they're working very hard on that part, and I think it's getting there.
Yeah. So you can't keep a good idea down. There's no way. Big Pharma's going to try to squish it, or they're going to try to arrange it such that they can have
it and sell
it. And so this is where the legalization thing comes in. Let's have a discussion about legalization versus decriminalization. Right? If I go out in my back 40 right here, we're kind of out in the country, but if I go out there and want to pick flowers, those flowers are decriminalized. There's no laws whatsoever about them. They're free for everybody. If you want to pick a flower, go pick a flower. Legalization means that the government has oversight over that flower, and they get to call the shot as to who has access to it and who does not have access to it. So you can take alcohol.
It's like that in Canada.
Cannabis, okay? And in some respects, that's good. And in other respects, then you get into who gets to control the substance. This is where alcohol is right now. Alcohol is legal for a certain group of people, which I'm fine with, right? 18, 21, whatever. Okay, cool. But what if the government decided, like during Prohibition, that we're going to make this illegal? Boom, overnight, done. So decriminalization, the government has no hands on. This is why when the discussion of legalization, decriminalization comes up, we are about decriminalization. We want the government 100% completely out of this realm. No, thank you. People are smart enough to make decisions on their own.
Well, not all.
Information.
I agree to a certain extent, because I think that the government try to control things that can become uncontrollable. Like when you decriminalize, like remember when they were talking about for cocaine, they were saying the best way to get rid of cocaine is to decriminalize it. At the end of the day, they didn't do it, but it could have gone wrong with that substance. Some people would abuse, some people would go to the extreme and become totally addicted, and then more expensive for the system. So there's certain limits to it. When we're talking about safe practice, I'm 100% in agreement with you.
Right. And the flip side of that discussion is, my feeling is, people who will abuse a substance will abuse it no matter whether it's legal, illegal, decriminalized. They will find a way to get, drugs I mean, we have a Schedule 3 drug. It has zero effect on drug use. Doesn't have any effect. People will find a way. And now the price of those products is elevated. So now there's incentive, massive incentive, to go out and make and sell these drugs. There's a massive profit incentive. So now that profit incentive is there. And the other part, and I don't want to land on it, but the other part of this is the adulteration issue. So now there's, and we see this in the MDMA space all the time, because MDMA, in the party scene could be called ecstasy, Molly.
I've been through these things, rave parties.
Which are rarely, if you tell, we test everything we get. Everything, not only test chemically, but test on ourselves. Because I want to know what I am using on somebody. Even though I might get it from the same person, I will test chemically, test on myself.
So you have a lab where you can do those tests?
That's a very simple test. There's a place called Dance Safe. I don't get any endorsement from them. And the Dance Safe was created specifically to protect the rave crowd from adulterated substances.
Oh, okay.
Because a big problem in using ecstasy and Molly and the street versions of MDMA is they are adulterated with other substances, mostly like some type of methamphetamine, right? Because that's what you want in the rave scene, right? So then you get these substances you think are MDMA, but are anything but. It might be, So there's a problem with that. And why has that cropped up? Because there's profit incentive to be able to do that. So there's a whole, this is a whole other discussion we could get into, but but to pull it back, and the intended safe use of these substances for a specific issue are extremely powerful. Powerful. Yeah,
I agree on that. You think that next generation will be more open to those substances and using it?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep, totally. I mean, I see, not to give away age, but Michelle and I are in our mid-50s, and there are very few people in our age group who are open to this.
No, and we've been educated the reverse of that.
Right.
Of course. Yeah.
Totally. But I look at the younger generations, and they are 100% open to it.
Yeah.
For therapeutic uses too. I mean, these kids are smart, right? They're smart. They can
smarter than we are.
So yes, what they do is they have the ability to because they've been inundated times 100 from what we were, times 100 with bullshit. And they have
information.
Right.
Exactly. We didn't have that access to information, so we were brainwashed by what our parents were saying. Like, you smoke a joint, you're gonna end up in the street, prostitute, and end up by using heroin. Today, the government goes like, "Hey, you can smoke a joint; it's legal." When do I tell my daughter? Yeah. If you want to smoke a joint, it's not going to kill you.
Right.
Our parents didn't do a great job because probably they didn't have the information. These kids coming after us, they have access to everything. And even if we say something, they're going to check it out. Like, you say something, oh yeah, let me Google it. No, that's not true. You full of beep. And they go by them. Yeah.
And to circle back around to Paleo FX, that is why we created this event. It's because we were like, the government did a good job of wrecking people's health over the last 70 years. A really good job at that. There is nothing that the government puts out about health and wellness that is credible. Even though they roll out expert after expert, zero of that is credible. Yeah. So we want to make a collection of people to come in who do know, because they've demonstrated results, that they are the true experts and they know what optimal human diet and exercise looks like.
So tell me about diet and exercise, because I do agree that you can transform your body and reverse your body clock just by what you eat and how do you behave. Why paleo and not other type?
So first of all, we will say that there is no one specific absolute diet for everybody. It just doesn't, across the board, you just can't say that. What we can say is, number one, you know your body better than anybody. So reclaim that empowerment. You know your body. I know my body. I know what my body feels like when I eat certain things. And if you don't, you can relearn that. We were all born with that compass. That compass, for the large part, has been washed out of us, but you can always reclaim it. When I was training people, this is the first thing I did. I would have them wear, whatever tracker that they were using. First thing when they woke up in the morning, I would have them not look at the tracker and begin journaling how they felt. And I mean everything. How does your brain feel? How does your body feel?
Brain, think about it and put it there instead of relying of what you're getting as information from the outside. I love it.
Now look at the wearable and compare. Over time, I have every wearable device you can imagine right now, just because we run this event, and I love them all. And there has not been one that I have worn for a while that I have gone, oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I agree.
And I'm not special. I am not. Anybody can do this. Anybody can.
Learn to control your body. Yeah, using your mind, you control your body and learn how it works. I agree.
And now, circling back on that, the basis of the paleo diet, what we operate under, is that gluten is not good for anybody across the board. Some people's sensitivity to it is higher than others, but it is not something that is optimal for a human diet. Some people can tolerate. I happen to be a person who can tolerate certain amounts of it. Doesn't bother me. So some people, like my wife, she even gets around it, she'll have a reaction to it. She's very sensitive to it. So there's that. Refined sugar, refined carbohydrates, good for nobody or no animal. That's what they are good for, is the profit margins for the companies that make it. That's what they are good for. So
they're good for fungi.
That's
the only thing.
So beyond that, if it's pulled from the ground whole, if it's hunted, right? And then you get into all the variances. Well, what if I get my meat in the supermarket and I don't hunt? Well, okay, it would be better if you could hunt and get. But is that a suitable? That's okay, right? You do what you can with what you have. That's what we always say. And from that, I mean, we have people with Paleo FX from, I don't know if you know Michaela Peterson.
Yeah.
Total carnivore, total 100%, and she has a reason for that, a very compelling reason why she's that way, all the way to what we would call more of a pescatarian type of diet. We have people who thrive on what would be vegetarian plus some fish.
Yeah.
Totally cool. What's the commonality between both of those? No gluten, no refined sugars. That's the commonality. It's a big tent. I don't care if you go keto. I don't care if you go carnivore. I don't really care if you're vegetarian or vegan. It's cool as long as you're getting a clean protein source. I'm down with it.
As long as
it works for you, if it works for you, I am totally down and in support of it. If you're doing it because somebody else told you to do it, because it's a trend, just check yourself. Check yourself.
That's the problem today. People are doing diet, and keto, for example, is one of them, because it was a trend, and people are saying, it's great to do that. But I'm 100% with you on that. No diet is the best diet, and do what your body requires to be functional enough and try to learn. We can adapt our epigenetic today has shown that you can actually change a good part of your DNA.
Oh, you totally can. Yes.
So
just look at the work of Bruce Lipton, right? If you want to go metaphysical on this, it's not just what you do in the day, it's also how you think in the day.
Yeah.
That's getting more into the metaphysical part, which I'm totally down with. And I love the work that Bruce Lipton does, because it is true. And that gets into
I agree with that.
Yeah. Right.
The power for mind and our brain, it's like crazy. What is next for you? Where you want to go? What you want? What is your life goal? How do you see yourself and Michelle in 10 years, 15 years?
Well, Michelle and I have very humble goals. We just want to change the world. That's what we want to do.
The word is mine. The word is mine.
Yeah. I think so. People ask us this all the time. Like, what is our ultimate goal? What are we trying to do? So we wrote a book, Primal Uprising. We have Paleo FX. We have these.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have these masterminds we do. We have these coaching sessions. We take people through trauma resolution. All of that in one ball. People ask us, well, what are you about? And what we are about is we are here to have people remember their true sovereignty, their empowerment, their sovereignty, and their freedom. And to the extent that they outsource any of that to any other person, to any entity, to any agency, they are enslaved. They are enslaved by their own mind.
So you're trying to get people freedom.
Freedom, yes. And their freedom doesn't have to look like mine. And in fact, if they choose to be enslaved, that's not my issue either.
Yeah.
I wish you well, and I hope it works out. But if you are ready to break free of the human zoo, we can be your Sherpa. We can't do the work for you. We cannot do the work for you, but we can illuminate a path if you so choose to follow it. Right. And it is, and your expression of that, just like diet, is what works for you. That's not my call. I just want to see everybody free, empowered, and sovereign over their own bodies. That's why we exist.
Wow. That's a fantastic conclusion. It's beautiful words, and hopefully, you know what? I think you're on the right path for sure. You've struggled so much that it's getting there, and I'm very happy that you know where you're going, and you know how people are joining. Hopefully this year, the conference will be bigger and bigger. It's probably going to be the biggest one you had before. Keep going, Keith. It was an honor for me having you. There's so much to say and so much to do and so much to learn from you. And next time, bring Michelle on.
Totally.
And I'd like to have you both and to keep this discussion again and turning around the concept of reclaiming your freedom. You know what? This is the answer I always give. Like, people say, you've been an entrepreneur, what money cannot buy? And this is it. Freedom. That's the only things that money cannot buy. You are your own master. You're the master of your life.
Exactly.
Going to get that freedom. I love it.
Exactly.
So much. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
It was an honor. So I'll put your website and everything on the post. Is going to be an AGTV post, and I'll guide people to your next conference as well, and to the referral and all the material you have, and to your book.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And come on down to Austin, April 29th, and join the
very
cruise.
soon, actually. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Keith.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Bye-bye. Have a fantastic day. Bye.